challenging question. Can you ask the question again?
When,
Maybe ask the question in two parts,
okay,
for me.
okay.
Okay. How can you tell if someone's enlightened?
How can you say someone is enlightened, and are there, that's number one. And how does one recognize an enlightened person, and are there different stages of enlightenment for a human being?
Well, enlightenment occurs when, as Prabhu has been describing, there's a profound shift of identity from a relative, ego-based, personality-based identity to the discovery of a non-relative or absolute self-sense that is literally infinite. So when such a shift of identity takes place in an individual, it's obvious and it's unavoidable. When someone's fundamental identity is based on a relative life of the unique self, the unique ego, their relationship to time, their relationship to existence is fundamentally relative. It's small. It's time-bound. And when the shift is made from a relative, time-bound, ego-based identity to a discovery of a self-sense that's based upon the infinite, the discovery of the infinite. I am that which was never born, and I am that which will never die, and or I am the energy and intelligence that created the universe and is creating the universe, awakening to itself and becoming aware of itself through the body, mind, personality of the relative body and relative mind of, in my case, Andrew Cohen, or Prabhuji, or any one of us. It's very different. So, from the perspective of enlightened awareness, from the perspective of the awakening to the infinite nature of reality and awakening to the infinite nature of the self, the body, mind, and personality are recognized to be mere vehicles through which this infinite energy and intelligence can manifest and express itself in this world. So when such a shift, when such a profound shift of identity has actually, literally, truly occurred, it can't be avoided and it can't be hidden, because that individual can help but express the true nature of their own self, which they've discovered, which is that their true nature is timeless, formless, beginningless, and endless, literally infinite. And such a discovery has a fragrance, has a particular expression. It's unavoidable and it's unmistakable and it's profound and intense and implicating and overwhelming. In such individuals, the current or the vibration, the current or the tangible vibration of the infinite is alive. So through the relative nature of their unique body and unique mind is the tangible expression and vibration and manifestation of a current that is vibrating with infinity. And so if this has happened to somebody and you spend time in their company, it will become obvious to you that something has happened to them. They're no longer the limited relatives' personal identity that they used to be, and something else, something other, something profound and miraculous and unmistakable is coming through the personality and coming through their body and mind. And that which is coming through them is not relative, but it's absolute. It's transpersonal. It's absolute. It's miraculous. So, now that being said, this kind of event happens to different people. not always at the same level of depth and the same level of intensity. Some people have a measure of access to enlightened awareness. Some people have a much deeper access to enlightened awareness. And for some people, it's infinitely deeper than that. So for example, when Prabhupada was speaking, and he was speaking about, for example, meeting with Ananda Moima, for example, she was an exemplar of a level of depth and spiritual intoxication and spiritual freedom that's very, very rare. And very difficult to compare such a depth of spiritual enlightenment and moksha and liberation to many other people. So there are levels of depth and levels of awakening, and they're not all the same. Not all individuals who have made this transition have the same depth of awakening. But what's interesting about it, to speak about this in a metaphysical or philosophical way, is that which is infinite is beyond measurement. So that which is infinite is infinite. So whether you have access to a measure of that which is infinite, or whether you have access to a much bigger measurement of that which is infinite, the thing itself is still infinite. So relatively speaking, the infinite is only itself and it's nothing else. But that being said, relatively speaking, there are definitely enormous differences in the level and depth of enlightenment between different enlightened individuals. It's not all the same. For example, the enlightenment of Lord Buddha created a spiritual revolution. And the awakening of some individuals is so profound, so powerful, that it has a powerful effect on the evolution of human culture. It impacts human culture as a whole. And such individuals are not forgotten. We're still speaking about them today. The intensity of the awakening had such a power that it created ripple effects in hundreds of thousands and ultimately millions of human lives. And it's still being felt today. So it's certainly true that some people are for sure they're awake. They have discovered the ultimately infinite nature of the self and of reality itself. And this has changed them forever. But that being said, some individuals have an access to a level of depth that is incomparable. It's just not the same thing. And this is part of a longer discussion. But the human capacity to evolve and to awaken and to develop at the level of consciousness is also evolving. Enlightenment and what enlightenment is and what it is, and the capacity for human beings to awaken and become enlightened is also evolving. So this is part of a larger discussion, so I'm just going to introduce an idea here because we don't have time to go into it in greater depth. But as human consciousness and human culture evolve, the capacity of the individual human being to evolve and to become awakened and to become enlightened is also evolving and developing. So I just wanted to make a statement here that relatively speaking, there is no end for inner development. That inner development, spiritual development, is endless. It's always possible to become that much more awake and that much more enlightened. Consciousness is capable of infinite development. So no matter how, and this challenges, I believe, some Vedantic ideas, but that's okay. No matter how, quote-unquote, enlightened any human being can be, that individual can still develop and evolve in the most extraordinary ways. So I know traditionally in Eastern thinking, there's an idea about coming to the end of development. In Buddhism they call it getting off the wheel of becoming. And this is part of a larger discussion, but I think that maybe we need to question some of these ideas, because I've come to understand, and I've been influenced by many other thinkers and philosophers, especially the American philosopher Ken Wilber, to understand that the human capacity, not only for enlightenment, but for development of consciousness itself, consciousness and cognition, can infinitely develop. We can always go farther, become more conscious and develop in so many ways that aren't instantly available to us. So I think this is a very different, compelling way to think about our individual collective potential for higher consciousness and higher development, because the idea that the human potential for evolution at the level of consciousness and cognition is infinite means that from that perspective, there's no end to what's possible. And that's a very different way to think about the possibility of moksha, which is about coming to the end of becoming. Maybe, and I'm introducing this as a new idea, that maybe this is an old way of thinking, and maybe the human capacity for inner evolution is infinite. And if it's infinite, this opens up our minds and opens up our hearts to an infinite human potential that stretches infinitely beyond this lifetime. Because if the human capacity for consciousness and cognition, if the human developmental capacity for consciousness and cognition is infinite, we're able to see this lifetime and our own potential for awakening in this lifetime as part of an infinite trajectory and an infinite unfolding that has to do with the evolution of human potential as a whole, way beyond whatever may have happened to us, as extraordinary and profound, as miraculous as it is in this life. So this thinking about it in this way makes it possible for us to open up to an infinite possibility, an infinite potential that stretches to infinity. And this is how I prefer to think about it at this time. Thank you.